Welcome to the ABRSM workshop. Today, I'll be your host, Daniel Ma, and our ABRSM representative is Miss Natalie. A brief overview of what we're going over today is what is ABRSM, how to prepare, how to participate, and a summary, and then a Q&A at the end. Everyone, please stay for the group photo after. All right, with that, we welcome our ABRSM representative, Miss Natalie.
Thank you, Daniel. That was a very nice introduction. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone, for attending. My name is Natalie Voss, and I am the ABRSM representative for Texas. And I myself am a music teacher as well, and also a student of music. I also take lessons, and so there is never an end to learning. And so I love that we are in a group of people who are passionate about music and about music education. So I'm always excited to meet new people. Today, I want to make this as interactive as possible. And so at any point, please feel free to use the chat and ask any questions that you might have. Or if you have any comments, or if you have prior experience with either music competition or assessments like this, and you have some input for us to share, please feel free to do so. We can always learn from each other. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully we can all see this together. All right. Okay, so as I said, I am the Texas rep for ABRSM. ABRSM, it is the Associated Board of the Royal School of Music. So it did start in the UK. It is a global organization, and so there are people from all over the world that participate in this as well. And like I said, I wanted this to be as interactive as possible. And so at this point in time, if you can access your chat, and I love to get an idea of people who have heard of ABRSM, or if you haven't heard of ABRSM, tell me maybe how you measure progress. How do you know, it could be music related or not, but how do you know if you are making any progress at something? So if you're wanting to learn something new, what are ways or steps that you take to see if you're progressing? So we'll take 3-5 seconds. If anybody has anything to share and you want to tell us, well, you know, how is it that you measure progress, please feel free to share with us.
Well, me personally, I've actually never heard of the ABRSM term, but I do remember that when I used to play piano, I took like exams to kind of see what level I was at.
Okay.
And I guess maybe that's something different. I'm not quite sure.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? So exam is one of them, as Daniel mentioned. And feel free to unmute if you want to share. If not, that's okay. We'll keep going. But like I said, feel free to at any point share something in the chat, and I will love to answer any questions that you have. So some popular or common ways that people share progress or measure progress, obviously with music, is performance. And so if you perform at recitals, if you perform at, you know, with your school orchestra, or even just out in the community, those kinds of things is a way to measure, you know, how confident and how competent you are at your instrument. Another thing would be the enjoyment that you get from learning music. Of course, this happens at all ages. I mentioned at the beginning that I myself am a student as well. And so I continue to enjoy music. And that's one way for me to see if I'm getting better is how do I learn something new? How am I, bettered as a person with learning music. And of course, the last way is assessment. So Daniel mentioned taking exams. So that's a form of assessment. So a third party person telling you how you are doing. It's not just your teacher, not just your parents, not just your friends, your colleagues, but someone in a formal setting, maybe giving you the results or the ways to improve. And so today I want to tell you about ABRSM, which is a form of assessment. And so we'll focus on the assessment part of ABRSM. I mentioned ABRSM is the Associated Board of the Royal School of Music, and a lot of people know it for just the assessment that it does, but actually it is a charity organization. So it's an organization that betters music education around the world. It has over 127 years of history in just making music education available around the world. So many exams that are taken each year, over 93 countries. It is a global achievement. So when you do participate in the exam and you get the recognition or the certificate at the end, it is something that's recognized around the world. There are roughly about 1,200 participants in Texas, and it is growing, and it is in all states in the US. But in Texas alone, we have Houston, Dallas, and Austin as the main regions where people take the exams. And then in addition to that, ABRSM also is involved in music relief and building music schools around the world, helping with providing instruments and so on to people that wouldn't otherwise have the means to receive education in music. There's publications. ABRSM publishes its own books and so on, and of course, performance opportunities that come up. And so all of those things are part of ABRSM, but of course, we're going to focus on assessment, as I said in the beginning. So the more popular forms of assessment within ABRSM are what we call graded levels. And so with each level of ABRSM exam, of course, the difficulty and the involvement, it gets a little bit greater, but it is meant to be a way for all kinds of musicians to participate. And so it's not only limited to those who are set on going to the conservatory or making music your career, but even the hobbyist, someone that just really enjoys learning music. And even if you're not pursuing it professionally, you can benefit from having that assessment. So the graded levels are available in different forms of exams. Practical exam is one type, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And there are 10 levels of that. The performance grade levels, there are 8 levels. Practical musicianship, jazz levels, and then of course diploma levels. And the diploma level is the more advanced level. So you would have had to pass through all the graded levels before you can do the advanced levels. And then there are also group assessments. And so similar to if any of you participate in UIL, in region, and so on, there are these types of assessments through ABRSM as well, ensemble choir and jazz ensemble. And then of course there's the written theory, and there are 8 grades there. So the performance and practical exams being that they are the most common because they're on the instruments themselves. I thought we'd talk a little bit more about that. And I'd love to, answer any questions at any point if anyone has questions. But with the practical exams, practical grade exams, I should say, we mentioned that there are 10 levels. So there's what's called the initial grade, which is the prep, very sort of primer level. So initial grade, the prep level, and then there are 8 grades after that. So 1 through 8. So there are 10 altogether. This is an in-person exam. What that means, it's a face-to-face exam with an examiner. So someone actually from the UK comes here and provides assessment and listens to the performance and so on. There are key parts to the exam that are very specific to ABRSM, and that is you do have to prepare within each grade level the scales, the oral and sight reading, as well as those 3 pieces or 3 repertoire. So scales are for training your technique, oral for your listening skills, and then sight reading obviously would be your reading of the music. And then the 3 pieces are to test your performance level. This is currently offered twice a year. In Texas, usually it's connected to our school semester. And so if there's a spring semester, at the end of spring, there's an exam. The end of fall semester, there's also an exam. Obviously, 2020 is how it is this year. And so we've had to unfortunately cancel our fall exam, but it is hopefully due to resume next year in 2021 with hopefully COVID, moving behind us soon. And then another exam that's available is called the performance grade. And now this one has some similarity to the practical grade, but it's different in that there are only 8 grades. And so you only go from grade 1 through 8. So there's no initial, there's no prep. And so you start with grade 1. It goes up to grade 8. It is remotely accessed. What that means is it's an online exam. So it's a video submission. Instead of doing the scales, oral, and sight reading, because that's usually done in person, you will focus on just the performance portion of the exam. So the students learn how to put together their own program. They write their program notes. They have to decide on the order of their program. So it's a little bit like a mini recital. So there are 4 pieces in this program. You record it in one smooth take. So it's not separate takes, it's one smooth take. And then that's something that is submitted online. And this happens multiple times a year. And it is something that is going on right now. So right now we are in the middle of registering for the performance grades, which are happening starting in January. And so if that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to ask any questions, or you can always email me if you have any questions, and my information is available at the end of the webinar here. And they are available in all these different kinds of instruments. So all the different woodwind, strings, piano, percussion, all of that is available with either of these exams. So I want to take a quick little pause to see if anyone has any questions. So I don't know, Cindy, if that was a question or you are just talking about the different types of exams, but you are correct that there are theory exams as well as performance exams. Is the performance equivalent to the practical grade? Yes, absolutely. So they are both equal in weight. And so that means if you do say practical grade 3, and then the next year you do performance grade 4, you can keep going, back to practical, or you can stay in performance and go to grade 5. And so they are equal in weight. The difference is one focuses on kind of like a menu. So it has all those parts separately. So the examiner is listening to all of those things in separate parts. But the performance grade is focused on holistic approach to the music. So you're programming to your strength. And so the students get to pick their pieces and show what they're best in. So they're both equal in weight, but the focus is a little bit different. One is kind of on the parts and the other one's performance as a whole. Is there a test for violin? Absolutely. So violin is available in both. Violin actually has the initial grade already released for this coming 2021. So if you're interested in preparing for strings, so it's under the syllabus bowed strings. So violin, viola, even viola da gamba, cello, double bass, all that, the strings group are all together under the same syllabus. And so, yes, absolutely available for violin. It's one of the more popular exams next to piano as well. Okay, great. Thank you. So please keep the questions coming. If you have any more questions, just pop them into the chat. I'll periodically stop and answer any questions. So let's keep going here. So how do we participate? And so if you are someone interested in participating in ABRSM exams, there's some key things that we have to keep in mind. The first thing is that the applicant will have to create an account to register. So who is the applicant? The applicants are the official account holders. So they have to be either parents, teachers, studio owners, or adult students. Anyone over the age of 18 are able to create an account and act as an applicant. And the reason is because the applicant is officially responsible for delivering the exam payments. And so they will have to pay and act as kind of the person to sign the contract or to say, yes, I'm going to fulfill all the requirements. And then the student is the one that performs the exam, and the students are called candidates. So the applicant creates the account, and the applicant can enter as many candidates under the account as they want. But if you're a parent, you only have one child, that's perfectly fine as well. You can enter just one person, or you can enter 10 people. It doesn't matter. Whoever's account holder is the one that pays and books the exams. The examiner then assesses the performance and provides the scores and the comments. And so the examiners, when we're doing remote exams, they provide the comments and the results, and all of that's delivered remotely. So it will come, you'll get an email to prompt you to look at the results. But if you're doing an in-person exam, you will actually get the in-person written what we call marked forms, or the result forms of your assessment. The examiners themselves actually are rigorously trained in London. They get training between 1 to 3 years before they're allowed to be an official examiner. And they go around the world and do these assessments. And so both remote and in-person exams are evaluated or assessed by these examiners. And so what to expect when you actually register for an exam already. If you are doing an online exam, you will have, as an applicant, created the account, booked slot for the exam and paid for it. And then at that point, you are able to take the exam from your home, or if you are in a school studio, you're able to take the exam there. So either performance grade level, the video one that we just talked about, or the theory grade, both of those are available online, and you can take them from anywhere, as long as you have a computer and internet. Of course, there are some guidelines to follow, what's allowed in the room and what's not allowed and so on. But other than that, it's remote. It can be taken anywhere in the world. If you're doing face-to-face, or what we call in-person exams, those are at designated exam venues around Texas. So there is one in Houston, there's one in Austin, there's one in Dallas. And so currently we have the 3 official ones if we're doing in-person exams. And again, the in-person exams are also available as practical and the theory grades. And so those are both available. And just to remind you, the theory exam is the written one. So a lot of times people get a little confused and they say, oh, I want to do the performance, which is the playing, and I want to do the theory, which is the scales. That's not how it's defined in ABRSM. The scales, oral sighting, all that's under practical. Theory is a standalone written exam only. Okay, so that's kind of a popular misunderstanding people have. And then of course the results and certificates, they are processed directly in London and they're published 4 weeks after the exam day. It does take a little while because of the sheer volume, but also because it goes through a lot of quality control checks. And so there are a lot of people that have to kind of make sure that everything is done correctly. And then it is actually graded and published by a third party site so that there's no tampering. And then the certificates are actually sent to the applicant, the person that signs up within 6 weeks. The certificates are very official and they got a seal from the Queen, who is a patron of the organization. I'm going to keep going one more before I see some questions come up. So that's great. And I'll answer them in a second. And then lastly, or second to the last, now that you've signed up, now that you know what you want to take, how do you prepare? And so ABRSM, like I said, is also a publisher. And so ABRSM creates the curriculum, the materials, and it publishes a wealth of information that's available. Whether or not you decide to take the exam is up to you, but you can always use the materials. They have just so much wonderful materials on how to teach sight reading, how to teach scales, how to source great repertoire, through the different genre and through the different time periods. So there's a lot of wonderful materials available. I have them kind of color coded here. So all of these are sort of our practical exam things that you need. If you want to take practical, these are the materials that you would need to prepare. And then these ones, the blue ones are for oral exam, and then the pink ones here for theory. There's definitely a lot more at the ABRSM shop online. I don't want to click on it, but once you're online, you can find a lot more information. And then those are printed. There are also ABRSM apps that are available. There are a ton of different digital products that ABRSM have recently released, which are great. There's the music case, which helps students practice. The oral trainer also helps with the oral test. That's part of the practical grade exam. And then of course the theory grade or theory works is the app that goes with theory. So you can see here, I also color coded them. Earlier I said the blues were, the oral training. So even if you use an app, it doesn't mean that you cannot use the books. You can have the books and apps work together. Same with theory, you can have the theory books also work with the app. I've done a whole nother webinar training on just how to use the apps, how to teach from the books, how to teach from the apps, how to plan your lessons so that you can integrate both. So that's a whole nother separate webinar altogether. And then lastly, there is the instrumental apps, which are specific to instruments. And these are also available for download. And we will watch one of them in just a second. But in the meantime, I am going to look over here at the chat to see what questions that we have. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. I know that we have some chats here. It's not letting me access it. That's very strange. Daniel, would you be able to send me a quick chat again to see if that box pop up?
I can read them to you.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I go up here and then it says
what
that
was
I
the
cannot
last one that
access
you
the chat.
answered?
I think I answered the one about whether there's violin exams.
Oh, okay. So
There should be like 5 more.
yeah, first one after that is, do we have books for the theory exam?
Yes, and so I think I may have answered that already then. Let me go back. So all of these pink ones with the pink background, these all have to do with theory. So yes, lots of theory materials. And then this pink background here again is the theory app.
All right, so next question is, for the music theory practice, how come there's only grade 1 to 5?
So there's grade 1 to 5 in the app because they are developing or releasing the 6 through 8, I think next year. So it will come, I think with the digital apps, it has a lot to do with licensing, like whether they release through Android or with iOS or whatnot. So there's something to do with that. But I know that the 6 through 8 will be released pretty soon here. But let me just go back. But these books are available all the way through 8.
All right, and then one last question.
Mm-hmm.
So for the piano performance grade, is a digital piano allowed, or does it have to be a grand piano?
Yes, digital pianos are allowed if they are touch sensitive keys. And so there is a whole guidance document to talk about sort of what is available, what is allowed. The general suggestion I have is that you want to provide the best quality sound as possible. So if you're doing a recording on a digital piano, make sure that the sound quality is as close to the acoustic as possible. And so there's not a, they don't disqualify you from using a digital piano. You can, but if your digital piano is has very poor quality sound, then it doesn't represent the student very well, then I would be cautious to not use a keyboard that has very poor sound.
All right, so we have another question.
Sure.
Can we use the 2019 to 2020 practical exam pieces in the year 2021?
Yes, absolutely. So all the syllabus that are published by ABRSM, they always come with a 1-year overlap. And so if the syllabus is 2019 to 2020, you get to use it until the end of 2021. So there's always a 1-year overlap. So it kind of depends on the year of the syllabus, but there's 1 more year that you are allowed. Oh, I should say, because the new syllabus for 2021 is out, you can use that new one in 2021, but you are not allowed to mix syllabus. So for example, if you have 2019, 2020 syllabus, and you want to use the songs from there, you need to use all the requirements from there. So the scale, sight reading, all that from that syllabus. If you decide to use the new one, 2021, 2022, you need to use the song, scales, sight reading, everything from there. You can't mix the two. But you are allowed to use the 2019 for 1 more year if you stick with the requirements under that year.
So if a digital piano has 1 or 2 white keys that don't make sound, is that okay to be used for performance?
I'm not the examiner, so I can't tell you one way or the other, but as a teacher, I wouldn't use it. So if I was the teacher of that student, I would be too cautious. I wouldn't do it just because it, again, doesn't represent the student well. So you want to give the student the best possible, opportunity to perform the way that they should. So if there's anything that will, deter them from that, then I wouldn't use it.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
That's
not right now. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Daniel. If there are more questions, please.
Oh, there's another one.
Oh, yes. Go
Where
ahead.
can I find the requirement for recording?
It is all online. So if you do want to send me an email, I can send that link to you. The recording is under what's called performance grade. So if you go to ABRSM performance grade, under key information, that's the tab. Under key information are all of the guidance requirements. But again, if you want to send me an email, my email is going to be available at the end of the session. I can send you the direct link to it. It's all online at the ABRSM website. All right, I will just keep going. We just have a couple more and then we have a Q&A session, but I'm glad that we're getting all the questions in right now. That will work as well. So let me keep going. One last thing is, of course, well, why? Why do we want to put our students through an assessment? What's the purpose of it? So at the very beginning, we talked about how different ways to measure progress is to enjoy music or performance or assessment. And so, of course, one reason that we participate in assessment is it's a form of music education. So we have all different ways of learning. You can learn through the classical way, a very traditional way of learning music, or you can learn sort of by assimilation, just following, someone who's a very great jazz pianist, or sort of learning under someone's tutelage, or you can follow a curriculum. And so ABRSM sort of this music education curriculum that allows you to follow through, and that takes me to the next point, as a systematic approach. So it sort of already has all of the science or the study behind, the research behind, well, how is it going to help someone develop their skills? And I find this personally to be very convincing as a teacher myself, but also as a student. Like I said, I'm also a student always. I have this goal of lifelong learning. I think it's great that we never stop learning. And it's because anyone can learn something, but when you are talking about results and products, it can be very obvious. Anybody can say, I've taken the violin for 10 years, or I've played the piano for 5 years, but my 5 years and your 5 years aren't the same. Like, who's to say what 5 years looks like? What should a 5-year pianist or a 5-year cellist look like? But when you have a very systematic approach to benchmarking, if someone says, I have taken ABRSM grade 7, people know exactly what kind of caliber and what sort of rigorous training you've gone through to be able to attain that. And so it's a really nice way to measure, well, how have I been doing and how can I get better? Because now there's a recipe to kind of deliver that result very clearly. So, so it's a great way to gauge your learning. And then of course, there is a lot of other benefits to having an assessment that's global, and that's what I call university preparation. So a lot of students, again, they may not go into music conservatory or to do music as a career, but every parent knows when you have to complete those university applications, they're not just looking for a 4.0 GPA. They're not only looking for grades, but it is the complete person, Are you volunteering? Are there other skill sets that you have? Are you a leader? You know, they're looking for someone also that has stuck with doing something for a long time. You know, people do swimming or they are, you know, in leadership roles. But it's not enough that you're just doing something for 1 month. You know, you volunteer for 1 month, that's great. But what does that, you know, do for the long term? And so people are looking for students or college candidates and applicants that have something that's distinctive about them and that they have the discipline to continue with something long term. And so people have definitely used ABRSM as a way to add to their college preparation as well. Again, whether or not they study music, you know, you learn something for a long time, you have the paper to show it, and that makes a difference. And so that's where we will conclude and do our Q&A. You see my contact information here. I am available through phone or text. You can also find anything relating to ABRSM on the social media. Please feel free to email me if you have questions that I did not get to answer today. But yes, if there are any final questions, I would love to answer them right now. It could be related to what we talked about today, or if there's anything I didn't cover and you actually are an applicant already, I can also answer questions relating to your specific case. So any questions?
Did you see the question about, is there a requirement for teachers when student participates in the exam?
Is there any requirement for teachers when the students participate? So that's kind of a big question. I'll try to answer it. And if I don't answer it the way that you're looking for, whoever asked that, please feel free to type a follow-up. So first of all, teachers are welcome to apply. You don't have to have membership or anything. Anybody can apply to enter their students. And then as a teacher, you are welcome to prepare them using the materials that we just talked about. And you don't have to be present necessarily on the day of the exam. A lot of teachers do. They just want to make sure that their students are ready and just kind of be the emotional support on that day. But a lot of teachers don't have time to show up, or they do show up if they're the accompanists. So ABRSM doesn't provide an accompanist. So if you're a violinist or singer, you need to have your own accompanist. So a lot of times the teachers will accompany them. But other than that, I guess the requirement for the teacher would be to prepare, to prepare the students. And if you as a teacher are the applicant, then you would obviously make the payment for them. But if you are not paying for them, then I guess just preparation would be the most important.
So another question is, what's the minimum level needed for the benefit of, like, to be noticed on the college application?
So the minimum limit is also a bit of a, you know, depending on your case. But I would say that if you are trying to get into the conservatory, or if you want to major in music, then for sure you want to be at least in the 6th through 8th grade level. So 8 being the highest before you go into the diploma levels. And so, you know, at 6, 7, and 8 level, that would be considered more of the late intermediate into advanced. And at that caliber of repertoire, then you are close to, if not equal to, freshman level music. And so I would say that would make a more significant, you know, be noticed more. And people actually do, if they take, say, grade 5 theory, and then they have grade 7 or 8 practical, they sometimes can get a waiver out of taking freshman level theory, or to replace their performance, or replace an audition with their ABRSM performance. But it depends on, the program that you apply to and how strict that college is. Now, if you are not doing music at all and you are just wanting to show that you kind of follow through with something long-term, then I don't think necessarily that the grade level matters, but just how many years you do it. And so again, it's kind of like swimming, if you are on the swim team and if you don't make sort of the regional and national team. But the fact that you have been doing it year after year after year for 6, 8 years, and you have the paper trail to show, that's significant as well. So it's the same with ABRSM. People have kind of kept their certificates, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in a portfolio, so they can show how stuck with something. And I've been recognized every year for the past 7 years. And here's the portfolio to show, So it depends on your goal, maybe.
So another question.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. I see them now. Thank you. But yes, feel free to, yeah.
All right, I'll let you take over.
Then. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, I think there was just something with me sharing my screen that it didn't want to, let me see the chat. For practical piano grade exam 6 and above, do we have to have at least a grade 5 theory? That is correct. That is a requirement. So it's called a prerequisite. For any performance or practical grade, you must first pass a grade 5 theory or equivalent. So there is also a website, or there's a page on the ABRSM website that tells you what's the equivalent to it. But the easiest way is to do the grade 5 theory. So if you don't have grade 5 theory, but if you have, I think it's jazz theory, that's also 5, practical musicianship, that is 6, and then it has the equivalent to, like, if you've done RCM, Trinity, MTNA, and all of those things, like it has some equivalent to what it is. But for those people that have never done theory or ABRSM theory, the grade 5 is about equal to pre-AP theory. So if you do the theory through your school, so it's about pre-AP. So if you do the MTNA, or the TMTA, sorry, it's about pre-AP level. For online theory exams, the candidate required a certain level of computer skills. That's a good question. It is made to be as user-friendly and self-service as possible. And so it's sort of not meant to be very complicated. Now, there are certain requirements that you have to hit. So there's an app that you first have to download. And then there are specific process. So the computer has to be able to see the whole room. And so there's a scan that you have to do of the room first, to make sure that there aren't things left out that will suggest that you are being dishonest. There isn't someone, behind you and in front of you holding up the answer. Like, you have to do a whole scan of the room. And then there has to be a responsible adult that's available in the room if you are a minor. So there are kind of like processes that you have to follow before you start. But once you start, it's kind of just drag and click and very short answer field. So the exam itself is not hard to do. But there are, like I said, steps that they require before you start. So in that sense, maybe you have to be somewhat knowledgeable of how to, make sure your computer camera is on and that sort of